All right, hi all. We're live with Ms. JD. Today we're talking with in-house counsel about how they got to where they are, about their career paths, and the pros and cons of going in-house. I'll let our panelists briefly introduce themselves. Chris, do you want to start?
Sure. My name is Chris Isham. I work in the corporate governance team of the Walmart legal department. I've been with Walmart almost 16 years. My career path at Walmart is fairly unique. I started as a corporate paralegal on our corporate team, worked for a couple of years, and then decided to go to law school, continued to work during law school, and hired in right out of school, and I've been with Walmart the entire time.
Great. Leah, do you want to go next?
Sure. Oh, Leah, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me this morning. I am a corporate counsel at Amazon, and I have been here a little over a year. I support their retail business, particularly sports, toys, outdoors, and then recently a business called Treasure Truck, which you have to Google. Prior to Amazon, I was doing private equity and M&A work at Allstate Insurance Company. And before that, I was at a law firm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, doing commercial transactions and M&A work.
Great.
Leah, I should add that I also I forgot to mention that my practice area. When I hired in as an attorney, I worked on international M&A for Walmart for about 8 years, and then it's been about a year in real estate governance, and I'm now on our corporate governance team, supporting the board of directors, a couple of board committees, and our global equity team.
Great. Rita, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rita Hicks. I am senior counsel at Panalpina, which is a global shipping and logistics company. Basically, we move everything you can possibly think of on a business-to-business basis from point A to point B. My job is for the Americas region, North and South America, to run our energy projects vertical. So anytime a company wants to build a pipeline, platform, grid, windmill farm, whatever that might be, we help move the components of that project from place of manufacture to place of installation. And then we do resupply after the fact to keep those things running for the energy companies that we service. My job is really broad. I do the contract negotiation, customer engagement, but I also manage the claims and litigation docket, and to the extent that there is government relations work or regulatory affairs work to be done related to our energy vertical, that's also my job. I've been at Panalpina for about 2 years, and before that I spent 9 years at a litigation boutique doing complex commercial litigation.
Great.
Straightforwarding it all.
All right, and last but not least, Havia.
Hi, I'm Nabiha Sayed. I am the global editorial counsel at BuzzFeed, which is a deeply entertaining job. So I am a media and First Amendment lawyer, though the swath of things that I deal with at BuzzFeed are anything from intellectual property to talent negotiations to pre-publication review, which is a lot of reading for libel, privacy, and that sort of fun stuff, both in the US and UK. So I have a law degree from the UK as well as from the US. I've been there for about 2 years. Before that, I was at a First Amendment and media law firm where it was all media all the time of all different sorts, where I had my own news gathering technology practice area. So I got to work with drones, sensors, weird cameras, that kind of thing, which turns out is pretty useful when you come to BuzzFeed. And before that, I was at the New York Times in their in-house department.
Great. All right, so it looks like Holland's still frozen. So it's, I think our next question for you all is if you could each talk a little bit about how you went in-house and how you got to where you are today as an in-house attorney. I don't know who wants to go first.
I'll jump in. I'm happy to jump in. So my first job, so I went to law school in the U.S., then because I'm a glutton for punishment, decided to go do it in the U.K. too, and then took a fellowship that they had in the New York Times, which sort of was like a, hey, baby lawyers, why don't you come and see what it's like to be in an in-house department? And I thought, okay, I'll do that and see what that's like before I jump into the big bad law firm world. And so in a lot of ways, I did this sort of, as I do many things, which is totally backwards. And I got to see what it was like to be in-house before I went and saw firm life. And I loved it. I really loved working in teams of people who are doing different things, feeling like you can help them out as they're sort of building a strategy, building, whatever the project may be, whatever the piece and the publication may be. And so after the term of that fellowship was over, I went to the law firm, and I sort of thought I would be there that was really fun to me in a different way, having lots of different clients. But then I sort of started building my own portfolio of things, and BuzzFeed was in them. And it was just a really great team of people to work with, so the transition was pretty seamless. And I have to say, I really love working for, there are a lot of different teams, but being part of the same company, part of the same team, that was really the draw of how I ended up there.
Awesome.
I want to chime in after you because I want to echo those same comments. For me, I was in a law firm, and you go to many different matters for various clients, and you can strengthen your relationship with those clients. But I felt that being in-house, you could really develop a strong partnership and help a team build something that could have great impact. And as a former athlete, I knew I wanted to be in an environment where I could get that and really see the impact of my work. And I think you can do that a little bit more closely when you are in-house versus at a law firm.
Great.
So how I wound up in-house, it was a little bit random, actually, because I was a litigator for 9 years, law firm litigator, and I really, really loved it. Loved it. But I was also an Army wife and a remote family. So my husband was always stationed away. And so the long hours didn't make a lot of difference because he wasn't here to be missing me at dinner time anyway. But when he decided it was time to retire, I started looking for a legal position that would give me more work-life balance. And we were in the good position of not being in a rush because I liked my job, but just sort of keeping an eye out. And so I got a call from a recruiter one day who asked if I would be interested in going to work for a freight forwarder. And my response was, I have no idea. And I had to Google it because you know that things move from A to B, they have to. But who gives a lot of thought to how that happens? I never had, I'll tell you that. And so I thought, well, I don't know. That sounds kind of weird. But I took the interview anyway because I figured, what can it hurt? And the GC, he just blew me away. Like, he impressed me in the first 5 minutes. I was sitting in the room with him. And so I went through 8 more interviews before I got the job offer. But I just knew from talking to him and listening to him that, freight forwarding might not be where my career is headed ultimately, but I'm going to learn a ton from this man. And so when he offered me a job on his team, I snapped it up. That was 2 years ago. And I continue to learn from him. Is a really enriching experience because as a litigator, you kind of learn on the fly. I never really had a mentor in my practice, but in-house I have a fantastic one who makes me want to come to work every day.
Great.
Yeah, and my path to in-house was sort of accidental. I was, first college graduate in my family, which obviously means first law school graduate in the family. But even before I went to law school, I wasn't sure if I really wanted to take on the expense because I was going to have to pay my own way. Happened to live in Walmart's backyard, so applied for a job as a corporate paralegal just to give it a test run before taking the plunge. And what that really meant was it was something of an audition for a couple of years. They knew I was about to go to law school. And they knew what they'd be getting into with me, and they realized that I knew what I'd be getting into with them. So was fortunate enough to have an offer to come join right out of school.
Great. So are there any particular skills that you think that it would be particularly useful for law students or early career attorneys to develop if they're particularly interested in going in-house?
So I will chime in here because, I came from a litigation background into a highly generalist role. And so some of my skills translated, sort of writing and the researching and all that kind of translated, but a lot of it didn't. What did translate, however, was a team, because when you're in-house, you deal not just with other attorneys, but you deal with business people, you deal with operations people. Everyone speaks a different language. And so the ability to sit and listen and learn and figure out the words that are going to make what you need make sense to the members of your team who don't have your background is really critical. So I would say, just critical listening, and then also the ability to figure out how to engage different kinds of people on your team, because they're all going to be coming at your contract or your governance issues or whatever it is with a different lens. They're all valuable, and you have to figure out as the attorney how to put all those things together and figure out what the best course of action is for your company. So critical listening, and then also just figuring out how to work on a team of people very different from yourself.
Great.
I chime in. I think that's I think that's exactly right. I work with lots of people who law is not the first thing on their mind. They are working on other things, and the ability to translate into those different languages, not only to hear theirs, but to learn how to speak in a way that they can hear yours, is fundamental to the job. I don't think you can get through the day if you can't figure out how to be a translator of different interests, different values, just different vantage points and perspectives. So for law students, make friends who are not just lawyers. Like, be explaining what you're doing and what you're thinking about in ways that are human. You have to talk to other people who are not lawyers if you want to be in-house.
Right, and I completely agree. And for me, something I think that your position as in-house counsel permits you to sort of embed the practice within the client, right? So one of the things you really need to develop or learn how to develop is sort of that longer term strategic thinking. So if you're embedded with your clients and you begin to understand their business, their short-term objectives, long-term objectives, overall strategy, and the way that they think strategically, you can help guide them in the correct direction in some instances, or at least avoid pitfalls in others that they're thinking of from an operational standpoint. They don't realize what long-term implications certain decisions can make. So that sort of longer-term strategic thinking is something that you really need to develop as you get to know your client's business.
And I want to jump in and say that I think communication skills are key. Echoing what everybody else is saying is that you want your clients to think of you as having that seat at the table. They need you. And so you have to effectively communicate in their language the list of taking certain actions. So whether you're getting oral communications or written communications, you really want to make sure those are really refined and succinct, so you can get your guidance to them and they can understand it and they can execute in a timely fashion.
Great. So were there any particular organizations that you joined early in your professional career or as a law student that you found to be helpful in pursuing a path to in-house counsel? In terms of networking connections or just general skill building with those team building skills and communication skills you were talking about?
Well, I would tell you with respect to skill building, really, really helpful for me was serving on nonprofit boards. Especially, I work on the board of Leadership Houston, which is a very multidisciplinary organization. And I sought it out because, as Nabi has said, you need to be able to talk to a lot of different people, not just lawyers. And they're very intentional about making sure that all the various industries and professions in Houston are represented in the population. So getting around a group of people totally unlike myself and figuring out how to accomplish annual objectives for the city kind of prepped me for the role of being in the room with business people and operations people and finance people and having to figure out how to meet all of their objectives, and make sure that my job as the attorney in the room is done. The local bar association certainly is really important because you do ultimately at sometimes need to hire outside counsel, or you need that connection at the company that you might be looking for the interview for. So I don't want to dismiss the importance of knowing the other attorneys in your community, but where I learned the skills that make me successful now was finding organizations in my city that put me in touch with people who do things totally unlike myself, so that I can learn, as Nabi is saying, some of the other languages that I need to be able to translate in as well.
Great. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I would say don't limit your. I mean, bar related, bar associations, bar related associations are great, and similar to what Rita was saying, don't limit yourself to things that are pure law practice based. I mean, for instance, one of the associations that I've been attending their annual conferences the last couple of years is the National Association of Stock Plan Professionals. It's really not geared towards attorneys exclusively. It's the combination of equity plan managers, accountants, finance background, and attorneys, and it's really about equity plan administration. It's not necessarily an entirely law practice based association or education, but like Rita and Nabia said, it's something to help you learn that language that helps you support your clients.
I'll add that I found doing a lot of pro bono work in various areas was very helpful. So I started doing a lot of pro bono work with different journalists just because it was sort of adjacent, to what I already do. And journalists are a particular stripe of person. They ask a lot of questions. They want to press you. You can't just say, this is the rule, ta-da! Like, they're going to ask you every which way. And learning just how to explain something 5 different times because someone's interrogating you is helpful. And you get that skill set, not only helping journalists a real fast way to figure out how to explain things, but going to things like the City Bar here in New York does these all-day walk-in clinics for a variety of different areas of the law, and you have a weekend beforehand where you get prepped on basic questions, and you go in and you just sit there and you talk to people and you do this sort of direct services stuff that's just a lesson in communication. It's sort of what Rita has been saying. It's just communication skills. You got to talk to people, and you have to. A lot of it is reading someone's face and their body language of do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand how I'm saying it? And figuring out your own voice in it too. I think I see other lawyers that I work with, and everyone sort of has their own authentic style of how you deal with things. Some people are more communicative, other people like to write long emails, other people are phone people, and just figuring out how you communicate best is a large part, I think, of that process of how to do right by your clients.
Great. All right. So how has your work-life balance been affected by going in-house, either in a positive way or have there been any challenges?
I'll start. So for me, I mean, I started in-house, so it wasn't really so much the adjustment to in-house for me as it was adjustment to a new career. But what I think for me, it's sort of all tied to the client team that I'm supporting. So when I started with mergers and acquisitions, it was entirely international work, and you never know when a deal was going to pop. You never knew when you were going to be sucked into a due diligence for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, or in a protracted negotiation. And that was something. Generally, you could see something on the horizon when something might actually take off, when it might not. But it's pretty difficult to plan, and I typically worked the same hours as my outside counsel. But I took that on myself, maybe a little naively, thinking, okay, I'm just out of school. I need to. These are the dues that I have to pay because I'm not going, to a law firm where I've got to bill 2,400 hours this year. But I was determined to roll up my sleeves, and I sat for every bit the number of hours that my outside counsel worked. For an M&A deal. But it's different because when you move into an operational support or a team that's not so heavily focused outside the U.S., when the business hours sort of compress themselves between 7 and 6 during the day, and the schedule becomes much more predictable, at that point I found that there is an easier way of attaining work-life balance because it's a little bit subject to what the client work-life cycle is like.
Great.
So I want to jump in and say, I don't love the word balance. I think it's a give and take. Some weeks I'm spending more time at work. Some weeks I have a little bit more time for life. That includes work also, spending time with my family, social activities. And my career is really important to me. I get fulfilled by it, but I also have relationships. And so I try to find the best use to my time. And really, when I'm engaged in something, I'm focused on it. So if I'm at home or I'm on a social event, I'm completely devoted and engaged in that activity. But when I'm at work, I'm all in and I'm focused on that.
So for me, the question has a few different facets, one of which is transitioning from a law firm in-house. One benefit to that has been my organization in-house, because it's a company based in a large city where we have a lot of customers. They place a lot of value on the things that I do outside just representing my internal clients. And so the fact that I'm out in the community working on various boards and, raising my company's profile, they view as a good thing. Whereas in a law firm, I had to carve out time to do that myself because it just wasn't viewed the same way. And in terms of hours, way better. I mean, when you're in a law firm and a litigator, you're on call 24/7. And so, like Chris, I work around the world. And when I'm working on a contract in the Middle East or in Singapore or wherever, I'm working, the hours of that team. But they tend to try to be very cognizant of the time zones that I live in. And that's just a culture that's built into my company. I'll say that, regionally, the general counsel sets the tone, and mine places a high emphasis on spending time with his family. And so it really is a top-down kind of issue on my team. The one thing that I didn't anticipate, and this might be just a kind of a cautionary note to anybody considering going into an industry that's very male-dominated, is other kinds of considerations when you're thinking about family. For instance, my entire industry is horrible when it comes to paid family leave of any kind. And coming from a law firm where if you're doing firm work, if you're doing consulting work, it's just a given that there's going to be a baseline of those kinds of benefits, at least in my market. I didn't ask the right questions going in. And so when my family has had those things come up, for instance, last fall, I adopted a daughter and I had to get very creative about the leave that I wanted to take from my company, not because my boss isn't fantastic, but because I'm in a large organization that has more than one function, and my boss, the GC, couldn't make those rules just for me. And so I would say from a time and a value of me perspective, going in-house was a very good choice for me, but there are other aspects of my job that I just didn't ask the right questions. And so I've had to get creative to make those work for my family.
Okay. I think on that note, asking the questions and understanding what you're walking into is really important. Like I expected there would be a huge difference going from a law firm to going in-house because that's what everyone tells you. But my clients there and here are still people who work in the news. And the news happens at all hours of the night, all throughout the world. That is just what happens with news. And so if I get a call at 11:30 p.m. that there's been some bombing somewhere or something has happened and we're running this thing and could you please take a look at it, that's what I'm doing because that's part of the job. And there's no escaping that. And I think that frankly should have been a little obvious when I was making the transition, and I will say, but I hadn't thought it through. I have an amazing team of people that I work with. The general counsel is fantastic and will say, please go to sleep. Like you should take rest. But the demands of the job are the demands of the job. What I do like is, especially at a medium stage startup that's growing, you have a great opportunity to help process. And so some part of protecting my time or thinking about my time and my life and the trade-offs in time in my life is saying, okay, if you get me an investigative story and say, hi, Nabiha, could you read this in the next 45 minutes because it's going live, but I know you've been working on it for 12 months, that means there was some breakdown in the system somewhere, right? So let's come up with the right answer of when I should be involved. And that actually helps structure my time in a way that's foreseeable and predictable. That's a luxury I didn't have at the law firm. At the law firm, you get a call and someone says you need to do this. You're like, yep, sure, I'm doing it now with a smile. And you don't have a chance, because you're not really embedded in their team, you don't have the chance to structure the whole process from nose to tail, how it works. And I really love that opportunity, especially at a company that's younger and creating its own processes, to say, okay, this is how we do things so we all stay sane, but still responsive to the demands that we have.
Great. It looks like we were able to have Kate join us. Sorry, technical difficulties getting started today. So I'll let Kate briefly introduce herself and jump in here. We've just been talking about what your work looks like, where you're at in terms of being in-house counsel, how you got into that, and any advice in terms of work-life balance.
Yeah, so just briefly, so we can let the call naturally go on. I am a litigation counsel at Apple in Cupertino. Much like everyone here was mentioning, having a multinational worldwide company, you kind of are on lots of different people's time zones and kind of always on call. I was at Latham for 4 years before that, and I clerked for the Ninth Circuit for Judge Tallman in Seattle. Litigation primarily at, or solely at Latham, and now kind of litigation with advice at Apple. We are, big enough that we do have a dedicated litigation team that handles everything but patents. So we have patent litigators, and then we have the commercial team who handles everything but patents. So across the world, from little to big, the class actions that you see in the news to little individual claims. So that kind of spans the scope of it. And all that I would add to work-life balance is that the one thing coming from a law firm is that the grind is different. There's a lot of work, and it's hard work. And you can be, like everyone mentioned, sort of on call for your clients and your business, particularly when it's a worldwide company. But the grind is really different. Not being on a 6-minute increment and billing is life-changing. So that's all that I would add to that one.
Okay, great. So what have been some of the unique challenges that you found going in-house? Is there anything that's been particularly challenging or different from your time working at a firm or before going in-house?
I want to jump in because my previous practice was transactional. I was representing private equity funds, manufacturing companies, doing acquisitions, and now at this in-house role, I get to tackle innovative business and legal issues, which is so rewarding. And I wouldn't say it's challenging in the sense that it's new, and the law sometimes was not intended to apply to a certain circumstance. And so for me, it's really important that I try to understand what my client is trying to accomplish and give them solutions.
I would say the biggest challenge for me has just been trust building, and it's something that I didn't anticipate coming from a litigation background. Usually, you inherit a client when something has gone horribly wrong and you have to figure out how to fix it. But in-house, it's much more front-ended, right? You want to avoid the big messy situation to begin with by proper planning and proper strategy and the right contracts and the right policies. But my predecessor was positioned herself in a very adversarial position to the business team. She did not act like a member of their team or like their partner. And so I came in the door and nobody wanted to talk to me. And so I will tell you, probably the first 6 months in my job was just being a known quantity, being welcoming, answering all of the questions that were thrown at me, really taking the time, as Chris mentioned, to learn the business, learn the operations, learn everybody's names, talk to them about how I want to help them and I want to understand their needs, until finally they started knocking on my door instead of the other way around. And now I am sitting at that table with them, planning out contracts and planning out customer relations and things like that. But that's not how it started. And I think what you have to have is a thick skin about that, because it actually is true that no one wants to talk to the lawyer until they get a good sense that you're going to help them and not be a roadblock for them.
I think that's so right. When I started off at BuzzFeed, I'd walk by someone's desk and they'd say, "What did I do? Am I in trouble?" I'm like, "Nope, just going on a walk. Thanks." And so I decided that rather than sitting sort of cloistered away on a different floor, in the beginning, I made a point of actually like taking my laptop and sitting when I could, if I'm just like working on something on my computer and not taking phone calls that would be confidential. I went and sat where my clients were, and I would eat lunch with them and like really made an effort to say, I'm not here to kill your dreams and kill your stories. I'm here to make sure you don't go to jail for them. And I'm here for you, and really to be that known quantity, right? To be a human being and not some disembodied email or a disembodied voice saying no all the time. I think that is a stereotype people have of in-house counsel, and certainly you should be comfortable in the moments where you do have to say no. Like, it's not like I'm your best friend and now I can't say hard things to you. It's just that you have to be trusted enough that when you put your foot down, they get that that's because it's warranted, not because that's just what you do, and that when you're encouraging them, helping them craft something, it's because you care about the best outcome for the whole company. And that, I mean, that was the best advice I got before I started in-house from another longtime in-house counsel, and it has made my job just dramatically better. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to build that trust. It definitely took months and months, but it's something that pays off every day.
The thing that I would add on, I completely agree with everyone's comments. The one thing I would add on is that if you are moving into a new subject matter area or a new client team in-house, or if you're just even moving in-house and learning the business on a day-to-day basis, you need to learn to have the confidence to ask the questions that you think, okay, this is going to sound like a dumb question, but I need to know, what do you mean by this? And what you find is if you can probe the right questions that way, not only are you learning about the business, but you're going to flesh out some issues that the clients hadn't thought of yet, because you're requiring them to get down on a granular day-to-day level where they've been thinking at a very high strategic level and they haven't been thinking at sort of a mechanical process. And you can take the position that I'm trying to learn this so that I can provide advice up at the strategic level, but what you do is you're flushing out issues that you can get ahead of before they get too far down the road.
I absolutely agree with what everyone said. I would also add that for me, one thing that we've had, and this kind of comes from a chat, it's a tension between what my director is telling me and then sometimes what our business folks and the lawyers in our other groups want is they want kind of litigation cover. They want to be able to say, well, you guys can't do this because litigation told us we can't do it. And then from my director, it's like, we don't get involved unless there actually is litigation. So where is the litigation question here? And so sometimes that's a hard tightrope to walk, because the business is coming to you and you want to help them, but they're not really coming to you with the right question yet. And different from a law firm, right? We're all kind of different cost centers and people are worried about budgets. So it is kind of important to keep your work. And so that's I think that's a challenge that I've been kind of trying to figure out how to navigate since the beginning of starting at Apple.
Great. All right. And so what advice do you have for law students who are looking to go in-house in their career? Are there any particular steps you would recommend they take in law school or as an early career attorney? Or have you seen anyone successfully? I know Chris went directly in-house. Are there any other examples of that you've seen? Do you have advice for students that hope to go directly in-house?
Well, let me start. So the one thing I would say is don't assume. I mean, I think you've heard from some of the other speakers. Don't assume that the workload in-house is going to be any different than the workload at a firm. What's going to be different is the level of granularity you're going to be getting into. In some matters, maybe deeper in-house than it would be out in an external law firm where you're really just researching some legal issues and providing advice. What happens in-house is you tend to become more of a generalist, and what that means is you're really managing a ton of different things that are moving at completely different paces and have completely different demands for your time. But it can be every bit as busy as an outside counsel. But the other thing I would say is don't limit yourself to looking at in-house opportunities for just a legal department. Your Juris Doctorate is a very flexible degree. And I can use an example at Walmart. Our current general counsel didn't start in legal. She started in real estate, worked her way up to become vice president of real estate, then moved into become senior vice president in compliance, and from compliance moved back to be the executive vice president of Walmart real estate, and then moved to become general counsel of Walmart. So, you know, your degree is very flexible. It can be used in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas, and you can find yourself working into an in-house position, moving into the company, not starting in legal. So don't feel like you're going to be limited to looking for just attorney jobs in-house.
I think I share with other people what I received when I was young is that do something you're really passionate about. There are in-house jobs where you could just be solely focused on trademark issues. You could be the patent lawyer for a company, or you could be a generalist. As I stated before, I was a transactional lawyer, and I could go work, for example, a bank or investment fund. But here at this job, I touch IP issues, transactional, regulatory matters, and I use the skills that I developed as a transactional lawyer and brought that to try a number of different issues here at Amazon. And I think there are a number of different in-house roles. So don't limit yourself going to a law firm position or clerkship saying, oh, I'm going to be doing X. You know, you have options out there. So if you do something you're passionate about and excel, you will have options.
I can completely agree with Leah. I don't think I really understood until I came in-house that there are as many different kinds of inside lawyers as there are of outside lawyers. So there's no one path. Thinking about my friends who are in-house, none of them arrived at their jobs in quite the same way. For me, I will tell you, I think probably the most important thing when you're charting your path is the quality of the positions that you choose is more important than the substance. Leah's right, you should work in things that you're passionate about, but also, you know, choose places where it's a team of people you enjoy working with. It's a team of people that challenges you and makes you grow, because it's really those intangible skills as much as your JD that are going to make you successful in whatever in-house position you choose, because your audience is so very different inside a company. You know, having taken the time to learn how to relationship build, learn how to collaborate on a team, be around, you know, leaders who can teach you how to do that in a multidisciplinary way. You know, I think being mindful about the opportunities that you choose that are high quality are just as important as the particular subject matter that you're working in.
And that leads very nicely into the point that I would make, which is absolutely in line with everyone's, that there isn't one path. And for me, there was someone telling me when I was a young litigator in San Francisco, like, you should have done corporate work or transactional. You're never going to be able to go in-house. Nobody hires litigators. That's absolutely not true, because you don't necessarily even just have to litigate when you move in. So what I learned going through the process that I think pairs well with everyone else's point is that a lot of times people are looking for the right member of the team. You know, they want a person that they can work with, and that they can see the business folks working with. And I think once we get to the point where we're being considered for these types of positions, you know, everybody's smart and everybody's, you know, talented. So it can tend, even more so, you know, law firms tell you it's about the fit, but even more so, I think it's more about the fit in-house because of the variety of work that you will be asked to do. People want to be able to trust you. And so I think I wouldn't even limit myself thinking I want to go in-house, so I should do, you know, make sure that I do corporate work at the law firm. I'm a prime example of that. I never once touched a corporate matter ever. So I think that there are lots of different paths. So just do what you want and what you're passionate about, and that'll help.
Right, and I just want a navigator that went into a generalist position in-house, so it does happen. And I will tell you that during the interview process, my general counsel was very candid that he cared way more about fit than my background. He read my resume, he saw that I was a complex commercial insolvency litigator, which has nothing to do with maritime law, and didn't care because he believed from my resume I had the horsepower. And then in person, what he was concerned with is, our America's legal team is 5 people. Do you fit on it? And that comes down to interpersonal, that comes down to how do you work on a team, that comes down to who you are as much as anything else. And I would say on the flip side, that should be what you're looking for in a boss too, is, do I want to work with this person day in and day out? Do I want to work on this team day in and day out? Because whatever your resume looks like, if you're the right fit as the person, you'll get the offer. And then the question becomes, is this the team I want to be on?
I think that's a great point, Rita, that you want a right fit. It's both sides. Like, does this company share your values? Are they passionate about the same things? Are they willing to invest in what I want out of my life? And I think that was very important to me when I was analyzing taking this position, that yes, they are interviewing me, but I'm also interviewing them. And can I get out of this job something that can make me fulfilled long term?
Great. All great advice for law students and early career attorneys looking to make the move in-house. I think we're about out of time. If anyone has any other closing thoughts or advice they'd like to share, I'll open it up. All right.
I just have one last thing I want to say. I think that as young attorneys and law students, go after what you want. If you want that assignment, if you want to try a new area of law, work with a particular partner, ask for it. Most people are willing to help people who are eager and willing to roll up their sleeves and learn something new.
Great.
Well, it's probably not a surprise, but I mean, for me, it's 2 things. One of which is, developing your legal skills is really important, but develop as a whole person though. Don't, let whatever your legal job is become the only thing that you're focused on, because when you go in-house, you as the whole package is what matters, not just you as the attorney. And the other thing I would say is just do your homework on the company before you go in-house, because what looks like a great offer on paper might not be the right fit for you and vice versa. And so, just really give some thought and talk to people who have been there about what the right questions to ask are, not just substantively, but from a work-life balance perspective, from a professional development perspective. Doing your homework is really important.
What I would add to that is once you've been at a law firm for a few years, it can be kind of scary to start to look at in-house positions. And for me, I'm particularly talking about like going back to your partners or senior associates that you're working with and like not letting them know you're looking for another job. But I think that absolutely is kind of the wrong path. I think law firms understand that there's high turnover and that being a partner is not for everyone, and that there are different things about practicing law that make people happy. And so you shouldn't be scared to talk to mentors or advisors at your law firm if you're thinking about making a jump, whether it be to a smaller firm, to a different type of law, or in-house. There are people who have been practicing for a long time there, and most, obviously, you have to trust your gut and know the people that you work with, but most will be happy to like talk to you about it and give you guidance, because it can be a tough path to navigate alone. So that would be my one piece.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think and when you're doing your diligence, be sure on whoever you're looking at, be sure that you're not doing it alone. The bar is an amazingly small organization. And when you think about 6 degrees of separation when it comes to attorneys and the legal profession, you could probably trim off a couple of degrees there for making connections. So even though you may not know someone that works at this company, you probably know someone that does. And don't be afraid to sort of put feelers out in your network to find out if anybody does.
Great. All great advice. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to sign off. If you have other questions or other topics that you want to see Ms. JD talk about, feel free to connect with us on Twitter or Facebook, and you can find more information about going to law school and becoming an attorney at ms-jd.org. Thanks so much.